Nobody would dare reject Elon Musk's Tesla partnership offer. It was worth $50 billion. Until Ibrahim Traoré's response silenced the world's richest man like a child. The sleek Gulfstream G650 touched down at Ouagadougou International Airport at exactly 11:47 p.m. on a humid August evening in 2023. The aircraft's registration number was carefully obscured, and no flight plan had been filed with international aviation authorities. Inside the luxurious cabin, Elon Musk reviewed his presentation materials one final time, confident that he was about to close the most important business deal of his career. Musk had flown to Burkina Faso in absolute secrecy, telling even his closest advisors only that he was taking a brief personal trip to Africa. The truth was far more complex. He was attempting to secure exclusive access to what his geological consultants had identified as potentially the largest lithium reserves on Earth, controlled by a 34-year-old African president who had been frustrating multinational corporations for months with his stubborn insistence on economic sovereignty. The drive from the airport to the presidential palace took place under heavy security, with Burkina Faso military vehicles escorting Musk's armored Mercedes through the darkened streets of the capital. Despite the late hour, word of a high-profile visitor had spread through Ouagadougou's political circles, though nobody yet knew the identity of the mysterious guest. Ibrahim Traoré waited in his private office, having agreed to the unusual late-night meeting more out of curiosity than genuine interest in whatever proposal this American billionaire might present. His advisors had warned him that Musk was likely coming with offers that would sound generous, but contain hidden mechanisms for extracting Burkina Faso's mineral wealth at below-market rates. When Musk entered the presidential office, he was struck by its modest simplicity. Unlike the opulent chambers of other world leaders he had visited, Traoré's workspace featured traditional African artifacts, books on economics and history, and a simple wooden desk that looked like it had been built by local craftsmen rather than expensive European furniture makers. "Mr. Musk," Traoré said, standing to greet his visitor with a firm handshake, "welcome to Burkina Faso. I understand you've traveled a considerable distance for this conversation." Musk, accustomed to meetings where his celebrity status dominated the room, was surprised by Traoré's calm, measured demeanor. The African president seemed entirely unimpressed by the presence of the world's richest man. "President Traoré, thank you for receiving me on such short notice. What I'm here to discuss could transform not just your country, but the entire future of sustainable transportation and energy storage globally." Traoré gestured for Musk to sit in one of the leather chairs facing his desk. "I'm listening, Mr. Musk, though I should mention that I've already been briefed on Tesla's business model and your company's expansion strategy." This was not the reception Musk had expected. Most world leaders he met with were eager to impress him, hoping to attract Tesla investment to their countries. Traoré's matter-of-fact tone suggested he viewed this as a routine business meeting rather than an audience with a tech visionary. Musk opened his tablet and began his presentation. "President Traoré, Burkina Faso sits on lithium reserves that our geological surveys estimate to be worth over $500 billion. Currently, these resources remain largely untapped due to lack of advanced extraction technology and global supply chain access." He swiped to the next slide, showing detailed maps of Burkina Faso, with lithium deposit locations marked in bright blue. "Tesla can provide that technology and those supply chains, but more than that, I'm prepared to offer your country something unprecedented in the history of international resource partnership." Traoré leaned forward slightly, his expression remaining neutral. "What exactly are you proposing, Mr. Musk?" "I want to make Burkina Faso a full partner in Tesla's African operations. Not a supplier, not a contractor, but an actual equity partner. I'm offering your government a 15% ownership stake in Tesla's African subsidiary, which we project will be worth over $50 billion within 5 years. The offer hung in the air between them. $50 billion represented nearly 40 times Burkina Faso's current annual GDP. It was the kind of wealth that could transform every aspect of the country's economy and infrastructure overnight. Musk continued, his voice gaining the evangelical enthusiasm that had made him famous. "This isn't just about lithium extraction, President Traoré. We're talking about building Tesla's primary African manufacturing hub right here in Burkina Faso. Solar panel production, battery manufacturing, electric vehicle assembly, creating hundreds of thousands of high-paying jobs, and establishing your country as the technological heart of the continent. He pulled up another slide showing architectural renderings of massive industrial complexes, with the Tesla logo prominently displayed. We would invest $25 billion in infrastructure development over the first 3 years. Burkina Faso would become Africa's Silicon Valley, powered by the most advanced clean energy technology on Earth. Traoré studied the presentation materials carefully. The scale of what Musk was proposing was genuinely impressive, far beyond the typical resource extraction deals that multinational corporations usually offered African nations. Mr. Musk, this is certainly an ambitious vision, but I'm curious about the operational structure you're envisioning. How exactly would this partnership function? Musk smiled, interpreting the question as evidence that Traoré was interested. Tesla would handle all technology transfer, global marketing, and supply chain management. Your government would provide the lithium resources and local workforce. Profits would be shared proportionally based on equity stakes. And decision-making authority? Traoré asked. Well, naturally, Tesla would maintain operational control of the manufacturing processes and global strategic direction. We have the expertise and established relationships necessary to ensure success. Traoré nodded slowly. I see. So Burkina Faso would provide the resources and labor, while Tesla would control all strategic decisions about how those resources are used and how the resulting wealth is distributed. Musk sensed a shift in tone, but pressed ahead. President Traoré, with respect, this is how global technology partnerships work. Tesla has revolutionized multiple industries precisely because we maintain strict quality control and strategic coherence across all our operations. Mr. Musk, Traoré replied, his voice remaining calm but gaining a subtle edge. What you're describing sounds remarkably similar to the colonial economic relationships that Burkina Faso has been working to escape for the past 60 years. The comment hit Musk like a physical blow. He had expected pushback on financial terms or timeline concerns, not a fundamental challenge to the philosophical basis of his proposal. I think there's a misunderstanding, Musk said quickly. This is a partnership between equals. Burkina Faso would be a major shareholder in a company worth hundreds of billions of dollars. Traoré leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. Mr. Musk, let me ask you something. If this partnership is between equals, why does Tesla maintain unilateral decision-making authority? Why can't Burkina Faso have an equal voice in determining how our own resources are developed and marketed? Musk struggled to find a diplomatic response. The truth was that Tesla's business model required centralized control to maintain the innovation and efficiency that had made the company successful. Sharing strategic authority with government partners would slow decision-making and potentially compromise Tesla's competitive advantages. President Traoré, I understand your concerns about sovereignty, but you have to understand that Tesla's value comes from our integrated approach to technology development and deployment. Fragmenting decision-making would undermine the very expertise that makes this partnership valuable. Traoré stood up and walked to the window overlooking Ouagadougou's modest skyline. Mr. Musk, I appreciate the time and effort you've invested in this proposal. The financial scale is impressive, and I don't doubt Tesla's technological capabilities. Musk began to smile, thinking he was about to close the deal. However, Traoré continued, turning back to face him. I'm going to decline your offer. The words hit the room like a thunderclap. Musk sat frozen, his mouth slightly open, as if he hadn't heard correctly. I'm sorry, did you say decline? That's correct. Burkina Faso will not be entering into a partnership with Tesla under the terms you described. Musk's composure cracked visibly. President Traoré, I think you may not fully understand what you're rejecting. This is $50 billion we're talking about. This is technological advancement that could leapfrog your country decades ahead of its current development level. Traoré returned to his seat, his demeanor remaining calm despite Musk's obvious agitation. Mr. Musk, I understand exactly what I'm rejecting. I'm rejecting a relationship where Burkina Faso provides the resources and labor, while Tesla makes all the decisions about how those resources benefit humanity. He opened a folder on his desk and placed several documents in front of Musk. Over the past 6 months, we've been developing our own lithium processing capabilities in partnership with companies that respect African sovereignty. We're building facilities that will be owned and operated by Africans, using technology that will be transferred permanently to African institutions. Musk glanced at the documents, his face growing pale as he realized the scope of what Traoré was describing. You're talking about competing directly with Tesla in the global lithium market. I'm talking about Africans controlling African resources for African benefit, Traoré replied. We're not trying to compete with Tesla. As the meeting drew to a close, Musk made one final appeal. President Traoré, I came here offering to make your country one of the richest nations on earth. I'm offering technology, investment, and global market access that could transform millions of lives. How can you justify walking away from that? Traoré's response was calm but devastating. Mr. Musk, you came here offering to make Burkina Faso rich by continuing the same extractive relationship that has kept Africa poor for centuries. You want our lithium, you want our labor, but you want to maintain control over how those resources are used. That's not partnership, that's sophisticated colonialism. The words hung in the air as Musk struggled to process what he was hearing. In his business experience, every problem could be solved with enough money and the right technological solution. But Traoré was presenting him with something he had never encountered, a problem that couldn't be solved by offering more wealth. What would it take? Musk asked finally, his voice barely above a whisper. What would you need to make this work? Traoré considered the question carefully. Mr. Musk, if you're genuinely interested in partnership with Africa, you would need to accept that Africans must control African resources. You would need to license your technology to African companies rather than maintaining operational control. You would need to accept that Tesla's role would be as a supplier and customer, not as the decision-maker determining how lithium is extracted and processed. Musk stared at Traoré in silence for several long seconds. What the African president was describing would fundamentally alter Tesla's business model and potentially compromise the company's competitive advantages in the global electric vehicle market. I can't do that, Musk admitted finally. Tesla's success depends on maintaining control over our supply chains and manufacturing processes. Traoré nodded understandingly. Then we don't have a basis for partnership, Mr. Musk. But I wish you success in your efforts to advance sustainable transportation. As Musk gathered his presentation materials and prepared to leave, he found himself in the unusual position of having to process rejection from someone he had come to help. The cognitive dissonance was overwhelming. He had offered $50 billion and been turned down not because the offer wasn't generous enough, but because the philosophical foundation of the offer was unacceptable. The drive back to the airport took place in silence, with Musk staring out the window at Ouagadougou's darkened streets and trying to understand what had just happened. In his business career, he had disrupted entire industries and forced competitors to adapt to his innovations. But Traoré had presented him with a disruption to his own thinking that he was struggling to process. On the flight back to the United States, Musk's usual confidence was replaced by an uncharacteristic introspection. He had built Tesla on the premise that technological innovation and business success naturally aligned with global benefit. But Traoré had forced him to confront the possibility that his business model might perpetuate the same inequitable relationships that had characterized resource extraction for centuries. The failure of the Burkina Faso mission forced Tesla to fundamentally reassess its African expansion strategy. Within 6 months, the company began exploring partnerships that offered genuine technology transfer rather than operational control. Several other African countries, inspired by Traoré's rejection of Tesla's original terms, began demanding similar respect for their sovereignty in resource development agreements. Musk himself was changed by the encounter. In subsequent interviews, he began speaking more thoughtfully about the need for technology companies to respect the sovereignty of their international partners. He never publicly discussed the details of his meeting with Traoré, but close associates noted a shift in his approach to global expansion. For Traoré, the rejection of Tesla's offer became a symbol of a new approach to international economic relationships. The story of how Burkina Faso had walked away from $50 billion in order to maintain control over its own resources inspired other African leaders to demand better terms in their own negotiations with multinational corporations. 6 months after Musk's visit, Burkina Faso successfully launched its own lithium processing facility in partnership with a consortium of African and international companies that respected African operational control. The facility operated under a model where foreign partners provided technology and capital investment, while African institutions maintained decision-making authority. The success of Burkina Faso's independent approach attracted attention from other countries seeking alternatives to traditional resource extraction partnerships. Within 2 years, a network of African-controlled lithium processing facilities was competing directly with traditional multinational corporations in global markets. Musk's failed mission to Burkina Faso became a case study in business schools worldwide, illustrating how even the most generous financial offers could fail when they didn't address underlying questions of sovereignty and control. It demonstrated that the era of unquestioned Western control over African resources was ending, replaced by a new generation of African leaders who valued independence more than immediate wealth. Years later, when asked about his decision to reject Musk's offer, Traoré would reflect, "Money without sovereignty is just another form of poverty. Mr. Musk offered us $50 billion, but he wanted to keep control over how that wealth was created and distributed.